There are two main types of market research.
I look forward to meeting you and to helping you realize your goals.
Read the fitness center instructions before attempting to use the equipment.
The books are filled with drawings of machines he invented when he was a student.
Financial support can be offered to help pay your fees and other costs.
It is necessary to solve the equation to determine the unknown variable.
The book is informative, but it could be accused of political bias.
During an official ceremony, a memorandum of understanding was signed by the academic dean.
Our tutorial will take place on the second floor in room 1. The library offers group study rooms, so you can work with other students.
Proficiency in a foreign language may be demonstrated by assessment.
The first results on the Welsh language were reported in March 2003. The census found that there were 576,000 Welsh speakers aged 3 and over, or 21% of the population, which represents a 2% increase since 1991. The proportion of people in Wales aged 3 and over who can speak, read and write Welsh increased from 13.6% to 16.3% over the period 1991 to 2001. A further 138,000, or 5% of the population, said they understood Welsh but did not speak it. In addition, 84,000 gave a combination of positive responses that was imprecise, making it difficult to work out whether they could understand, speak, read, or write Welsh. The growth in the number of Welsh speakers has occurred largely in the south and east of the country.
The most visible manifestation of this wealth was a series of grand projects that were begun by Napoleon III, mainly in Paris, soon after he came to power in the 1850s. He said, "I want to be a second Augustus," making reference to the Emperor Augustus's claim that he'd found Rome a city of brick and left it one of marble. In the case of Napoleon III, he found Paris in 1851 a city of cobblestones and twisting medieval streets, and he left it one of asphalt and macadam, because what he began doing was bulldozing old Paris, the ancient medieval part of Paris, and replacing it with wide new boulevards, 85 miles of them, that he lit with some 20,000 gas lamps, which he took out all the old 18th century oil lamps, replaced them with gas, which gave a much cleaner, brighter, regular light. Also, 50,000 trees are planted alongside them, many of them the chestnut trees that we now think of as synonymous with Paris. And he drained the streets with 200 miles of sewers, these new famous Parisian sewers beneath the streets, thereby making the city a much more safer, pleasant place to wander, to stroll, to people watch, to have coffee or absinthe in the cafes.
How many years are in a decade? What do you use to identify yourself when you arrive in a foreign country? What do you press when you arrive at someone's front door?
What is the occupational title for the composer of a novel?
The terms circumference, diameter, and radius refer most commonly to which geometric shape?
What do you call a person who trains a team of athletes?
What is the term for an extended speech by one person in a play?
The topic we're going to focus on is the population challenge for the 21st century. Now, what is that challenge?
Well, I think what is interesting about population is that at the end of the 20th century, we saw tremendous changes which are going to follow through over the 21st century. And basically, our population is changing in size. It's growing very rapidly. We currently have about 7 billion people on the planet. That has probably doubled in the lifetime of most adults in this country. It is going to increase, we think, to around about 10 billion, and then it'll probably flatten out. It's changing in its density. We're all becoming far more urban. Currently, we have about half the world's population living in an urban area. That will increase to 75% by the middle of the century and to about 80 to 90% by the end of the century, when nearly everyone on the planet will be living in an urban area. Distribution of population is changing. We're becoming mobile in a different way. Traditional migration patterns are changing. Who migrates is changing, where they migrate. And probably, I think, one of the greatest challenges is a massive change in the age structure of the population, in so much as across the world, women are having less children, and as a consequence, as we're also living longer, the age composition of our population is changing. So, for example, by the middle of the century, for the very first time, there will be as many old people as there are young people on this planet.
I guess the most interesting thing that I can bring to the table here today is the fact that we are considering at Warwick the idea of general education for all incoming undergraduate students. Now, for those of you who aren't from the United States, it's quite common in the United States for students to only major after their second of a four-year undergraduate degree. And so they have the first year or two actually to sample many different courses across the curriculum. And this is called general education. This is not very common, not in this country nor in Europe, where in fact students come in specialized. Right? They already come in with a subject that they've chosen. The idea behind having general education now is basically because whatever specialist kind of subject that you're trained in is unlikely to be a source of a lifelong career in any sense of the word, no matter what the subject is.
There's always a choice on exams that I give, and I tell my students that when you're writing an exam, remember the following. One, answer the question. You'd be surprised how often people don't answer the question. They have some things they'd like to talk about, so they talk about that. But think of the poor examiner. He or she thought so hard to try to make a nice question, and their feelings are hurt if you don't answer the question. It's not good to hurt the examiner's feelings. Okay, now the second thing is when you ask the question, know your stuff. You should be fully in charge of the material in lectures and reading. And then third, it's helpful if you think for yourself. If the exam is intelligently designed, you should have some opportunity to exercise your critical abilities. And fourth, it is immensely helpful if you can write coherent English.
So palm oil is the most widely produced oil crop currently. It's used in a wide range of industries, including food, for biofuels, and in soaps and shampoos. However, the sector is growing fast, and unfortunately, palm oil grows in exactly the same environment as tropical rainforest. So the use and the development of palm oil, the growth in the sector, is leading to wide-scale deforestation. What we're hoping to do is, if we can come up with an alternative, we can slow the growth of this sector and therefore stop the wide-scale deforestation in Southeast Asia.
The earlier chocolate was quite unpalatable. It was they used to add things to it to make it more palatable. So the early chocolate, they didn't know how to extract all the cocoa fat from it, so it could be quite greasy, and if you made it as a drink, you'd have this sort of scum on the top. So they used to try and add things to it, like starch and things, to make it a more palatable product. So there are a lot of scandals around the kind of things they were adding to chocolate in the 19th century, so that by the sort of 1870s, 80s, there are people like Cadbury saying, no, our chocolate is absolutely pure. We have this new process, the Van Houten process, which now extracts all this horrible fat, and we can use that to make eating chocolate, and now we have a pure product.
Yeah, so I actually got interested in non-human animals by actually hanging out with them. As a college student, I had the opportunity to actually do some research with monkeys, and that actually brought me down to a very nice, warm Caribbean island where I got to hang out with a bunch of monkeys for the first time. And I think I can remember the moment when I first got interested, not just in their cognition, but particularly in their emotion, when I was hanging out on a beach that I was finding really beautiful, and it was warm and there was a breeze. And I noticed there was a monkey sitting right beside me who was like looking out into the water and seemed to be experiencing exactly the same things I was. And it just caused me to think, like, what does he know about the world? What does he know about the scene? Is he enjoying it? Does he find this beautiful? And it was kind of a fascinating moment because I realized that, you know, we now have these cool tools in cognitive science where we can answer some of these big questions. Whether you have a pet dog or a cat or even a goldfish, right, you can't help but wonder what they're experiencing and if they experience some of the same things that you do.
Computers have always been good at doing things that are really complicated for us humans. Things like crunching insanely large numbers and running complex algorithms. On the other hand, computers have a really hard time recognizing a particular voice or face in a crowd, something most kids learn to do before they're even out of diapers. But things are changing fast. Over the next decade or so, machines will more easily mimic inherently human abilities, and they'll learn to do it much the same way we do, through experience. Experience, in this case, means computers will be fed data patterns over and over again until they're able to automatically identify a particular sound or image on their own. This process is called machine learning.
First, on this issue of media, on using phones and laptops, we're kind of having some backsliding. I got a few emails from people who said that the person next to them was on Facebook or using their computers or anything, and they were really annoyed by it. So remember the rule. There are one or two people here who sought permission to take notes on a laptop for various reasons. But aside from that, unless you had express permission, no phones, no laptops during class, okay? It's just not courteous to our guests, and it's harder to multitask than you think.
Okay, well, I want to talk to you today about introversion and extroversion, which I have come to believe are as profound a part of our identities as our gender. and that therefore it's extremely important to know where we fall on the introvert-extrovert spectrum. And when I say this, I'm not talking about where do you appear to fall. Because in this extroverted culture of ours, we all tend to act a lot more extroverted than we really are, right? So I'm talking about who are you really if you could spend your time exactly as you please, your work days, your weekends. Would you be more of an introvert or would you be more of an extrovert?
We've started to have a dialogue with technology. And so this is where the realms of science fiction, I suppose, can come in, is because in the future, there may be a chance of actually having quite natural interactions with computers sort of vocally. Now, part of that is, and some of the research I do, is understanding the psycholinguistics of that. So understanding what we can learn from human-human dialogue and looking at the phenomena in human-human dialogue and how we can apply that to human-computer dialogue and how design actually augments and changes that phenomena. So an example would be that we don't tend to, in natural speech, we tend to align with each other. We tend to use the same words. If I was describing a bus, for instance, if you use the term coach, I would use the term coach as well. So that's called lexical alignment. Now we seem to be doing this we do this with computers as well, but the design of them actually changes the way that we do that. So the fact that we think a computer is sort of maybe basic at understanding us changes the way we behave vocally. And so this is interesting because it gives us a window on how people
Nick? Yeah, it's definitely something around balance. That's really what it comes down to, a more balanced way of living, and balance being that it's in balance with the environment. And the reason why we're living an unsustainable life at the moment is that our consumption patterns, be it energy, be it products, be it food, are completely outstripping the world's ability to support us. So that's why it needs
If there's a single piece of social science research that's really inspired you, what would it be?
I think it was a book that Richard, my co-author, wrote and published in 1996, and it came out when I was a PhD student at the University of Berkeley, and it was called Unhealthy Societies, and we used to fight over it in the library because we couldn't afford books, and somebody would take it out, and then we'd immediately put in a request to get it back, so people only had it for a very short time. But that was a book about inequality and about health, but a very, very rich text with lots of examples.
Cooking is such an amazing way to learn about science. Many of us cook every day, but when you start to think about why the recipes work, why is it that when you knead bread it has this remarkable texture, or why is it that candy recipes work as they do, or how is it that you cook eggs in a way that it comes out to be perfect, you immediately are led to thinking about basic principles in science.
You will need to read Chapter 1 before the management class.
The seminar provides an opportunity to exchange ideas with other students.
Accountancy students need a good understanding of profit and loss statements.